Here's the real reason every good idea in this family dies the moment Kody gets home. Kody Brown's decision-making process has long resembled a weather vane, spinning enthusiastically in one direction until a mysterious gust sends it swirling the other way. The pattern is so familiar, it practically qualifies as a franchise trademark. A grand idea, full support, a brief disappearance, and a sudden return laden with objections. Janelle describes the cycle with weary precision, noting how initial enthusiasm reliably collapses into a bonfire of second thoughts. And then there is the recurring detail that Kody's reversals tend to coincide with the opinions of one particular wife. In her own confessional, Robyn observes, lightly of course, that the others just do things without consulting the group. The remark is framed as a joke, though the timing is a little too on the nose to pass as coincidence. The show has repeatedly displayed the same choreography. Kody loves an idea while speaking to the wife who proposed it, disappears for a bit, then reemerges, parroting a completely different stance that aligns neatly with Robyn's preferences. Exhibit A: Mary's bed and breakfast. On location, Kody was brimming with support. By the time he returned home, the enthusiasm had evaporated, replaced with objections that sounded suspiciously imported. Exhibit B: Christine's desire to move to Utah. In private, he practically cheered her on. Once seated with the other wives, he performed a dramatic reversal and fed the idea to the group like it was a sacrificial offering. Exhibit C: The Great Flagstaff Land Debate. Cottonwood had broad appeal. Mary preferred it, Janelle was ready to pull out a checkbook, and Kody himself was visibly charmed. Yet when Robyn expressed disinterest, Cottonwood vanished from consideration, and Coyote Pass suddenly became the hill everyone was expected to die on. The through line is not subtle. The more visible Robyn's official position in the family became, the more blatant her influence on Kody's decisions grew. What was once whispered manipulation now happens in plain sight, complete with confessionals that gently nudge viewers toward the obvious conclusion. The current season merely lifts the curtain a little higher. Christine and Janelle speak more candidly than ever, and the editing finally invites the audience to connect the dots that have been scattered across years of episodes. It is a rare moment in reality television where transparency is not only allowed but encouraged, and the resulting portrait of the family's internal power dynamics is clearer than any of Kody's suddenly abandoned plans. Here's what no one seems willing to admit about Robyn's sudden moral awakening. It's not a transformation, it's a strategy. One brief scene of Robyn urging Kody to call his children has apparently convinced a portion of the audience that she's undergone a profound transformation. The collective amnesia is impressive. After nearly 2 decades of watching a family fracture in real time, some are ready to canonize the woman who helped engineer the collapse simply because she produced a few tears on cue. From the beginning, Robyn was not a passive bystander swept into a pre-existing mess. She was a willing architect of it. Even during the courtship, before she had any formal place in the family, she enthusiastically participated in secrecy as if it were a flirtatious game. The wedding dress debacle from Season 1 remains the perfect case study. A manufactured drama built on deception, followed by her indignation that Kody hadn't protected her little secret more fiercely. Respect for the established wives, children, and family rules was absent from the start. She didn't merely benefit from Kody's favoritism, she cultivated it. Yes, Kody shoulders the largest share of blame, but the insistence that responsibility belongs to him alone ignores the ways Robyn reinforced, weaponized, and profited from his worst impulses. The adult man argument, offered now as a shield for her, is strangely selective. He's apparently an autonomous being only when it comes to absolving her. In every other context, he's the gullible fool manipulated by circumstance, belief system, or emotional instability. If adult men are immune to influence, the last 18 seasons must have been an elaborate illusion. The family itself has repeatedly pointed to Robyn as a destabilizing force. The children described her as a primary factor in the disintegration of their relationships. Janelle learned early to watch her words, because any casual remark might be carried back to Kody in a distorted, incendiary form. Resolved issues had a habit of resurrecting themselves months later, always through Robyn's retelling. When the family confirmed these long-running patterns, viewers celebrated the clarity. But now, after a neatly staged conversation in which she professes dwindling respect for her husband's paternal negligence, the tide has inexplicably shifted. The contradiction is glaring. A woman who insists Kody reconcile with his children while simultaneously declaring those same children unsafe influences on hers. Sibling relationships must not be nurtured. Shared holidays are too dangerous, and even a gift exchange becomes a battlefield. Yet, in the next breath, she performs concern for family unity. The script is familiar. Say the right words, behave in the opposite way, and assume no one will notice. The show's timeline gymnastics only make the performance more transparent. Her grievances are consistently framed in a way that casts her as the eternal victim, a woman shaped by past trauma, perpetually wronged, forever on the defensive. But the record shows something far different. She has long acted as a wedge, intentionally or not, and continues to choose that role. The claim that she merely married into chaos ignores her active participation in expanding it. Even her own past, particularly her decisions regarding her children's father, mirrors the very abandonment narrative she wields as justification. The newest episode only reinforces the established pattern. The kids feel muzzled because any attempt at honesty will be twisted, misunderstood, or magnified by Robyn. Kody admits he is still protecting her from imagined harm, underscoring the lopsided dynamic that has governed this family for years. Yet, viewers are being asked to believe one orchestrated moment signifies true accountability. The audience is expected to forget the tears, the secrets, the carefully curated victimhood, the years of fractured relationships, and the consistent accounts from the original family members themselves. A single scene is not a redemption arc. It is an attempt to manipulate public perception, and not a subtle one. Robyn has always excelled at saying the correct, hindsight-laden sentence. But words unbacked by action are stagecraft, not sincerity. And the attempt to shift the narrative now, after so much documented damage, only underscores how little has actually changed. The viewers are not the fools here. Christine's departure exposed every crack the Brown family spent a decade pretending didn't exist. Christine Brown's exit from the Brown family empire is often discussed as though it were simply the first domino to fall, an inevitable shift in a long, cracking foundation. What tends to be forgotten is that being the first in this particular family meant stepping into the line of fire without a map, a precedent, or even the courtesy of a soft landing. It required a degree of courage the others would later benefit from, but never had to summon themselves. Leaving Kody was not, for Christine, a tidy administrative decision. It was a plunge into the unknown, while wondering whether the entire family would remain intact, but conspicuously without her, and what that separation might mean for her children. Later departures could comfort themselves with the reassurance that bonds among the kids would survive. Christine had no such guarantee. For all she knew, Kody could have worked overtime to sever Truly and Isabel from the rest of the family. The risk was real, and she walked straight into it. Before she could even reach the door, she had to endure the full ritual, defending her decision before the assembled firing squad, dissecting the carcass of her relationship while Kody erupted at her for allegedly betraying the family, abandoning principles, and generally torching their sacred unity. Then came the obligatory theological theatrics, solemn questions about religious protocol from individuals who, rather amusingly, do not attend church with any regularity. Yet suddenly, spiritual procedure mattered deeply. Convenient, as always. And while Christine shouldered all of that alone, others later walked the path she cleared. When Mary finally departed, there was no grand acknowledgement of the woman who made that escape possible. No recognition of how emphatically she had once smirked through Christine's announcement, or how thoroughly she distanced herself from Christine's pain. The eventual apology on a tell-all may have checked a box, but it hardly erased years of dismissal. Still, everyone is free to drift apart. No one is required to maintain relationships that died long before the contracts did. The magnitude of Christine's decision becomes even sharper when considering the groundwork she laid. Her exit bore all the signs of someone who prepared meticulously: therapy, financial planning, and strategies for handling the predictable intimidation tactics. When Kody unleashed his trademark outbursts, she navigated them with the composure of someone already mentally down the road to freedom. Even then, the emotional weight was heavy. Christine once described speaking to some of Janelle's children before leaving, asking what would happen if she walked away. The reassurance from Maddie that Christine would always be a grandmother to her children offered a stabilizing truth many adults in that household had failed to provide. The pandemic years had already clarified for the younger generation which relationships were substantive and which were merely ceremonial. When Kody chose separation, Janelle and Christine chose family. Her fear was not abstract. Christine grew up with the memory of watching her own mother leave a plural marriage and being shunned by the community and even for a time by her own children. That history haunted Christine's decision. She had every reason to wonder whether her children, Janelle's children, or even Leon might cast her aside the way she once did to her mother. So yes, the others have since made their exits, and each has navigated their own emotional terrain. But it was Christine who first stood in the storm, absorbed the blows, and walked away anyway. The courage required for that moment should not be minimized or retroactively diluted by the relative ease with which others followed. Here's what no one wants to admit about Tata Farms. Its leadership has a history of abandoning dreams halfway through. Tata Farms arrives with all the fanfare of a grand new venture, yet its odds of long-term survival look suspiciously similar to every other ambitious project that never quite materialized in this family's orbit. The enterprise is ostensibly driven by Janelle and Maddie, two individuals with an impressive history of starting things and an equally impressive history of not finishing them. Janelle's track record is a rotating cycle of new beginnings, half-unpacked boxes, and abandoned plans. Fresh flowers have appeared in the background of their lives about as often as completed goals. Maddie, meanwhile, exited college at top speed to marry Caleb, shelving any nascent career before it had a chance to exist. With a rapidly growing household and young children who demand full-time attention, it would be charitable to call the business her second priority. The farm itself is still a theoretical landscape. The land must be cleared before anyone can even fantasize about designing a farm, let alone running one. And farming is not an idyllic romp through sunlit flower beds. It requires expertise, physical labor, equipment, irrigation systems, and the ability to sell a perishable product on a tight schedule. North Carolina's recent hurricane damage will not accelerate the timeline. Even optimistic observers concede that a project of this scale demands far more manpower than a pair of beginners with good intentions. The hope, the generous version anyway, is that Janelle's newfound independence may produce a different outcome. A dramatic personal rupture often refocuses priorities, and distance from Kody may finally allow her to pursue ambitions without the gravitational pull of his chaos. There is a lingering belief, or perhaps a friendly fiction, that her questionable decisions over the years were made under the pressure of being financially minded in a household that treated money like a suggestion. Free of that burden, perhaps she will finally make sound choices. Of course, there is also the less romantic possibility. Yet another venture destined to join the museum of half-realized Brown family business ideas, right next to my sister wife's closet. A shining example of what happens when enthusiasm substitutes for planning. Still, attempting something outside the realm of multi-level marketing is an improvement in itself. Whether Tata Farms becomes a flourishing enterprise or merely an expensive hobby, at least the aspiration is pointed in a healthier direction. If Janelle wants a greenhouse empire, a flower enterprise, or simply a new chapter, fine. Just let it be built on actual strategy rather than wishful thinking. And if experience is any guide, hiring professionals might be the first truly successful decision of the entire operation. Here's what the show never wanted you to realize. The biggest lies weren't to the audience, they were to each other. The grand unifying theme of this family's televised saga is remarkably simple. Everyone lied, and they did it with such commitment, one almost has to applaud the stamina. The carefully curated image of a harmonious, plural household was presented as though it were documentary truth, despite the fact that the only consistently honest narrators have been the children, whose attempts to speak openly were met with gag order enthusiasm and, reportedly, attempts at NDAs. Nothing says authentic family storytelling quite like trying to legally silence your offspring. Every adult figure in this ensemble has, at one point or another, contradicted earlier declarations. The contradictions aren't subtle. They're the sort of brazen rewrites that suggest the cast spent years performing not just for the audience, but for themselves. Even Christine has openly acknowledged that the tightly wound persona once displayed on screen was not an act so much as a symptom of the insulated world they all inhabited. Stepping outside that bubble worked wonders for nearly everyone, except, predictably, the couple still clinging to the mythology. Yet the deception was not solely malicious. Much of it appears to stem from self-delusion, a belief that the glossy narrative they performed was not only aspirational, but real. People often present their lives as they wish them to be, especially when cameras are rolling and contracts depend on it. The gap between what they felt, what they hoped, and what they were willing to reveal created a performance that eventually collapsed under its own weight. Of course, this glossy family mythology was also the show's hook. Viewers tuned in with the promise of insight into a different way of life, only to stay for the inevitable unraveling. The wives and children slowly disentangling themselves from a crumbling system and a patriarch whose leadership style aged about as well as unrefrigerated dairy. The quest to separate fact from fiction became part of the entertainment, even as the truth slipped further out of reach. So yes, they lied. They lied to the audience, to one another, and frequently to themselves. And while the full, unvarnished truth will never be delivered in a tidy episode arc, The ongoing attempt to decipher it has become the show's most reliable plotline. Here's the ugly truth about that spiritual release. It terrified Kody because it made his abandonment official. Kody Brown's season 19 performance reaches new heights of bewildering theatrics, showcasing a man determined to interrogate a breakup he himself spent years demanding. After repeatedly declaring he regretted marrying Mary, and generously doing so on camera for their child's benefit, he now feigns confusion over her quick decision to seek a spiritual release. The spectacle resembles a man pounding the final nail into a coffin he built, sealed, and labeled years ago, only to demand an explanation for why the occupant climbed out. His pattern is nothing new. Punishment is a familiar tool in his emotional arsenal. Anyone he believes has wronged him must endure the consequences. A rotating display of coldness, blame, and the occasional proclamation that he never should have married them. Yet the punishment requires an audience. Mary's growing indifference denies him the reaction he expects, and nothing irritates him more than losing the ability to wound someone on cue. Even his irritation with the church elders fits the pattern. Their decision to grant Mary a spiritual release on the grounds of abandonment threatens the carefully curated image of the benevolent patriarch. Being labeled an abandoner is inconvenient for a man intent on portraying himself as the misunderstood hero of his own saga. Should that label spread, even Robyn may find the heroic narrative difficult to maintain. The network's continued platforming only amplifies the farce. If TLC insists on centering its franchise around Kody's self-inflicted chaos, the far more compelling option would be to free Mary, Janelle, and Christine to tell their stories elsewhere. Give a competing network the post-Sister Wives chapter, and let TLC cling to whatever remains of its flagship couple's Stepford-style storyline. What becomes increasingly clear is that Kody is less interested in closure than in combat. He once relied on sparring matches with Mary for emotional fuel before marching straight into the arms of his preferred contender. Now, he attempts to bait her with word salads and circular accusations, anything to resurrect a dynamic she is no longer willing to play into. Here's the uncomfortable truth about Robyn's reaction to Kody's apology idea. She'd prefer the past stay broken. Robyn greeted the grand vision of an apology tour with all the enthusiasm of someone being asked to host a telethon for their ex's new partner. Her delivery, part warning, part disclaimer, made it abundantly clear that she neither expects Kody to follow through nor particularly wants him to. In her world, apologies appear to be an optional sport best left to others. This from the same person who so recently insisted she adored the broader family unit with operatic sorrow. Kody's sudden urge to make amends seems driven less by moral revelation and more by the practical need to rehabilitate his standing with the children of Mary, Janelle, and Christine, along with the ever-convenient value of producing usable footage. Yet, even this modest attempt at image repair earns no encouragement from Robyn, who has shown no interest in sharing him with those he ostensibly hopes to reconnect with. The question of whether genuine remorse factors into any of this remains unanswered. The cameras, however, are certainly rolling. What makes the spectacle particularly telling is that it was filmed, rehearsed, and presumably approved, yet Robyn still couldn't conceal her disdain. The facial expressions alone narrate a full counter-argument to every line spoken. Meanwhile, Kody seems blissfully unaware that what he's calling an apology functions primarily as cosmetic ego maintenance, rather than a meaningful gesture toward the people he has harmed. Together, they form a pairing so ill-matched, it achieves perfect symmetry. Two people who consistently amplify each other's worst impulses. Robyn's underlying fear appears almost palpable, that if Kody spends too much time around the women who left, he might notice just how bleak and suffocating the dynamic at home has become. Her perpetual frown, more default setting than fleeting expression, only underlines the atmosphere. Subscribe